exactly. Hey everybody, good morning. Nikki Burnett here. This is Taste Life Radio, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Taste Life Radio, what do? We talk about truth, we talk about health, and we talk about dogs, and we want to have some fun and bring on some of the smartest people in the world. So, yes, see, they embarrassed me when I walked in, so now it's my turn. So, I need to turn the music down now. And so, what we want to talk about today is really sort of one of those super cool topics that people are like, wait, what? So, if you've heard of ketamine, okay, and if you know me at all by this point, you know that I am one to do everything that's possible, to do everything through foods, through supplementation, through understanding labs and genetics, and as much of this stuff as I'm capable of understanding, sometimes we got to go outside of that.
We got to hit the edge of the box.
Yeah, right, exactly. And though, when we bring people on who are going to go outside of that box, it's always a holistic approach as much as possible, which is cool because it doesn't mean that stuff isn't important. It just means sometimes we got to take bigger steps to have more success or better success or any success in maybe this case, right? So I should introduce Sarah, Miss Sarah Eisenbud, good friend of mine. She's been on before. She is a therapist and now and for quite some time now, a ketamine assisted psychotherapist.
Yep.
Yes. So this is going to be an amazing conversation because we're going to talk a lot about drug-resistant depression, not antidepressant, drug-resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety, these problems that we're seeing in our world that are overwhelming and creating these mass amounts of suicide. And it's heartbreaking what we're seeing in the mental health world. But before we get started, as always, we got to talk about what we're grateful for.
It's a great place to start.
What are you grateful for?
I think the answer is always the same. My dog Boone is where we
Boone.
start.
Yay, Boone!
Little Boonsy, who's healthy because Nikki made him healthy
Yay.
with the new nutrition
Well,
plan.
just food, real food. That's all it takes. Yeah, not all it takes, but a lot of times.
Does he eat better than me? People say he does sometimes.
Yes, I know. It's the amazing thing. My husband will get in the refrigerator. He's like, is this our food or is this the dog's food? I'm like, it's our food, come on. Sometimes it's the dog's food.
Yeah, sometimes we share. The other day I roasted up some acorn squash and it was like some for me, some for Boone. But yeah, I think that's my big start of gratitude. And then I think just being able to have a job that I like. I was the other day talking to somebody about student loans and how much of a bummer they can be.
Yeah.
And I think we decided to come back to the framing of like, this is the like tax you pay to have a job you love and it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's kind of part of it. But especially with the hours that you're working now.
Yeah, I transitioned from my private practice to working at integrative psychiatry centers in Boulder, and I didn't really transition. I now am running a private practice and working 4 days a week up in Boulder at integrative psychiatry.
Which is interesting, though, because this is a much needed therapeutic is what we're seing. Yeah.
I mean, I think I was becoming so disparaged just being a mental health provider out there. I would always talk about, I love taking in people with anxiety, with PTSD, because I would see gains. But people coming in with treatment-resistant depression, you just can't talk your way out of a hole like that. Something has to happen at a physical level, whether that's with running labs, getting appropriate medication, supplementation, physical exercise, or some of these bigger adjuncts like ketamine assisted psychotherapy, or as it becomes FDA approved, psilocybin assisted psychotherapy.
That's an interesting one too. So we'll have that one on hopefully at some point because I think it's super interesting. They're very much for me personally, early on anyway, you know, you see ketamine, it's a horse tranquilizer, or it's somebody's recreational drug, right? I mean,
ketamine has like a bad rap. I remember the first time a client brought this treatment to me. It was like maybe 4 years ago. They were like, I've been really suffering, and they had this pamphlet, and it was like, a doctor will give you ketamine for your depression, and I was like, I don't know, it looks really sketchy to me.
That's
and I like, told that
scary.
client that I like didn't know if this was a good idea.
Yeah.
And she went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
And then came back and was better.
And there you go. The world opens up.
Yeah, just a good reminder that I do not know what I'm talking about sometimes.
Well, you know, sometimes you know, that's what makes people that I love to be around in healthcare. Good healthcare providers is if you're a seeker.
Yeah.
So you have to seek truth, and you have to, just because you don't know something doesn't mean it's right, and it also doesn't mean it's wrong.
Sure.
Either way, but you know, being a seeker and not being closed off to new therapies, you know, even, you know, there are some providers who are closed off to food. Food doesn't make a difference in our health. That's a personal experience. And so as long as you're a seeker and really looking to gather data, gather information, and understand that, you know, all that we can that's out there, you know, we have some limited capacities sometimes, but, you know, I think that that's what's really important. And so you're a seeker, and here you are, a ketamine-assisted psychotherapist.
Yeah, I've
cool
been
stuff.
doing this work now for about a year, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I got to talk about what I'm grateful for, and I think what I'm the most grateful for today is, of course, you and the fact that you're here. And I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time.
Yeah.
But we're coming up on Memorial Day, and so I am, I'm just really, really grateful for those who, you know, gave their lives to save our lives, and those who are still working really hard to keep us safe. And I'm so grateful to our military, and so thank you for all that you do, those of you who are out there. And we will celebrate you this weekend by going camping. And thinking about it, we'll have our flag out there. But that's another thing. I'm just ready to get out in the world and soak up the sun and do some camping, and, you know, all of the good things.
I mean, I think it is going to rain all weekend, but we can be grateful for all that moisture.
Stop it. I looked at the weather just last week, and it was all clear. So we're going down to South Fork, Colorado area. And then I looked yesterday and I'm like, wait, where'd this rain come from? And then it's going to rain here, but at least my plants will be okay, because we've been gone for 4 days. I'm grateful
you
that
either
I
get beautiful sunshine, or you get moisture that the earth really needs.
It's true.
Win-win.
It's true. It is a win-win. It's a little more of a win with sun. I just love the sun. Okay. All right, cool. So we did this before, but for anybody maybe who's new, I think that it's a good place to start. Just, you know, talking about your history, where you're from, what brought you here, you know, what motivates you every day, that kind of thing.
So 3 hours later, we're done with that conversation. But, I don't even know where to start. I guess I'd begin with just where I am now, which is I run a private practice called Denver Narrative Therapy Project, where I practice in the narrative tradition, which is just a kind of alternative, fun, exciting way to do psychotherapy that's non-pathologizing. And
big words. I love your big words. Non-pathologizing.
Non-pathologizing.
That's amazing.
Well, just stepping away the same way that, Nikki, you step away from allopathic medicine in a lot of ways. We've got this disease model that says what's wrong with people versus what's right with people, and how do we help them thrive. And I think narrative therapy does that. But it does it through just conversations. So there's real limits on what we can think our way out of and what we can talk our way out of. The words we use are really important.
And like the words we use, the words we tell ourselves, right? Because the way that when I talk to people about you, because I try to refer to Sarah as often as I can, because I think everybody needs it. Everybody needs to talk and needs the guidance. But you help people with their story, and you kind of help them to switch that story from the negative to a positive in a sense,
Absolutely. I mean, because when I love neuroscience. This is an area that I love it. And what we see is when we speak certain words and have certain thoughts, the same way when we put a drug in our body or when we eat a certain food, it's going to alter our brain chemistry. So there is that base, and that was the place from which I've been working for the last, 6 years or so. Before that, I have a background in always helping people in weird ways. A background in, I was a social worker. I worked with people with developmental disabilities. I bounced around in chaos trying to find my path.
As many of us do.
but this here, so even though I had a full-time job and a thriving private practice, I was full and no longer accepting new clients. A couple people that I really admire run a podcast and an institute and a clinic, Keith Kurlander and Will Vanderveer. And I was on their mailing list, and they sent out this mailing that said, we're looking for a ketamine-assisted psychotherapist. And I applied for a job, even though I already had a job. I was like, yeah, I think I want to do that, because I'd seen a number of my clients really respond well to the ketamine. I'd been getting excited, reading about, I think most people, what they know about psychedelic-assisted therapy, they learn from Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. But I had read it, and like everyone who read it, I got really excited and had been doing more reading. So that's when I transitioned to IPC, Integrative Psychiatry Centers of Boulder, where I work now. And and it's been wonderful being on a team and working collaboratively. I think a big thing to know about us is that we work, we don't just have ketamine and give it to people. And there are a lot of places like bouncing up that just do ketamine infusions. Just you stop in, you sit in a room, sometimes with other people, and they give you ketamine.
Oh, that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, we practice integrative psychiatry, so beginning with things like running labs, like doing genetic testing, like looking at nutrition, looking at physical health, looking at all of the pieces of the puzzle, and one tool in that toolbox that we use is ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And then we continue to come back to some of those other things, that base level of resourcing and health.
This is why, so often when I bring people on who are, whether they're referral partners or just people who I know and love and trust in the healthcare world, it's because we are very much like-minded in that we have to have multiple tools. And I am not just, just because I do nutrition doesn't mean I don't help to look at mindset and, environment and relationships and that kind of thing. It's not my, I'm not the best at it, which is why I have people to refer to, I can't do therapy. But I do talk to people about those things. And when I bring people in to, my clients who need a team, because clients often do need a team of practitioners, it's those people who view it, yes, food's important, supplements likely important, medication likely important or can be important, maybe it's not, right? As well as it could be physical therapy, it could be, it depends on what the situation is, but having that holistic approach in looking at as many factors as possible is, in my mind, the best way to help people optimize, get well, get better, whatever the issue is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, depression, which is what we work with particularly, and with ketamine, also PTSD and a few other concerns, is, I like to conceptualize it as a problem of not having enough resources. And so some of that might be, the very traditional, again, medical model way of looking at it is you don't have enough serotonin running around in your brain. You have a lack of neurotransmitter resources. But it's also important to look at, do we have enough social resources? Are we getting enough micronutrients in your diet resources? Are we giving you enough physical movement? That's another resource. And so making sure that a person has all of the resources they need to have a brain that functions properly and allows them to experience joy, connection, regulation.
Yeah. And with that being said, too, I can't help but to say, with that allopathic look of not having enough serotonin running around in the brain, you always have to ask why. And that's and that's kind of where we are, and where there's a problem with just going after the symptom. Because if there's not enough serotonin for some reason, why is it? Well, there are not enough amino acids in the diet or the micronutrients, right? Because these are the things that help the body to create serotonin. And there are many, many other factors, but always, whatever, if you're dealing with something like this or any physical, mental, and emotional situation, ask why. Always ask why. And if you don't know the answers, because a lot of us don't, you gotta seek out. But don't just say, yes, it's a lack of an SSRI. You know, usually it's not just a lack of an SSRI.
Well, I mean, and I think what we're seeing is depression even. This is such a broad term. Like, there wasn't even a term depression until, I don't know, like, I think it was like the 1940s is when that started being used as a term clinically a little bit. Don't quote me on that, but it's roughly around that time. Before that, there was melancholia. There's all these
melancholia. That's a fun one.
Yeah, there's just a, and together, like, we as a psychiatric community took all these symptoms that troubled people and gave them this label, depression. And so in narrative therapy, I would deconstruct that. If someone comes in and says, I have depression, I'd be like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah,
like, what flavor of depression do you have? How are you really being affected by it? We do see that there are some things in common, some common factors and some common needs. And ketamine seems to address a number of those. It is right now, I don't know if it's the right time to, but you know, what we see is that with people with treatment-resistant depression, depending on the studies you're reading, it's 70 to 85% has some effectiveness for people, which is, you know, talk therapy for a person with that level of depression is going to be under 20%.
Well, and if I were to sort of put this in my own perspective, even somebody with this type of depression, it would be even difficult to get them to an appointment to do talk therapy. Is that
It can be, absolutely. And there's all these things that we know are super effective for depression. You know, we see study after study again shows that exercising, getting your heart rate up for 20 plus minutes 3 times a week is as or more effective than any SSRI that's on the market.
That's amazing.
We know that.
Yeah.
However, you look at a person who has treatment-resistant depression, you say, I just need you to get up and go for a run. Just like, take a little trip to the elliptical. And they're like, good luck, lady. Like, I can't get out of bed right now. And so looking for some of these treatments that we can, we refer to the ketamine therapy often as a catalyst, something that's going to buy somebody enough traction that they can then begin employing all these other tools, resources, and skills that we know are effective. You're like, you just need more social connection.
Yeah, because that's what I want to do right now is be social. Okay. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And so when it comes to, I think one of the questions that I have as far as ketamine's concerned, how did we get to this point? How do we start to realize the benefits of it in how long has it been? I mean, because it's pretty incredible going from a horse tranquilizer, quote unquote. It's got other data too, but but that's what most people know it as, right?
People think about it as being from veterinary, and it was used that way. It's been used as an anesthetic on human beings for a long time. And so we've seen that the story of the beginning of ketamine psychotherapy, ketamine, unlike almost every other treatment for depression that tries to act in some way on the serotonin loops in the brain, it acts in a different way on what we call NMDA receptors. And without needing to know too much about that, it's a really different process. But there had been some ideas that this could be effective for depression. Because they started seeing people who were taking ketamine for something else.
Like recreational use or just
no, not
anything
recreational.
else? Okay.
It's used a lot as a very safe anesthesia. It's on most ambulances. It's used for children who need to be sedated quickly, but who you don't want to give something else that's not as safe to.
Isn't that interesting that it's so safe? I love that.
But they were using it actually in these studies to replicate the sense of schizophrenia, which is, we now know, is not what ketamine does. Like, the psychedelic and dissociative effects that come from ketamine are nothing like schizophrenia. But there was this research study in the 90s that was using it in that way. And what they saw was that it didn't do what they thought it was going to do, but they did see that people's depression was going down significantly after taking it. And so then there began to be more research done. At this point, there's been a significant amount of research done showing that ketamine decreases symptoms of depression and especially decreases acute suicidality. Like,
Wow.
fairly instantly.
It's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And crazy cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to hit on, you should know, and I know you know, I know virtually nothing about therapy and about mental and emotional health.
That's not true. But
So, and I think this maybe comes from conversations with you. And so what I know is there is a mental situation that is a dissociative mental illness, right? And then you have ketamine, which is a dissociative. So, can you explain the two to me? Or I know the differences.
Oh,
I think,
sure.
But
what is dissociation is sort of the question that you're asking.
Yeah.
So dissociation is a spectrum of basically to what degree is my conscious attention aligned with my experience of my body. Like how embodied am I right now, and how separate from my own experience do I feel? So we all experience dissociation.
Okay.
A great example of that is, have you ever gotten in the car and you just sort of end up zoning out and you arrive where you were going, but you don't remember the driving there? That is very low level dissociation. You're like, whoa, I wasn't really connected to what was happening, but my systems kicked in and they drove me home.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and so that can go all the way from over there, very normal experiences of kind of being out of it and disconnected, all the way to people who have PTSD or psychosis, who describe floating above their bodies, who begin to really just check out from their emotional experience. And it's a safety mechanism. Dissociation is good. Our brains do it for good reasons. It just can get stuck in and become a problem when somebody's not able to stay present with what's going on.
Okay.
When we take psychedelic medications, they can induce a dissociative effect, which kind of just gives us, I like to think of it more as a meditative stance.
Okay.
In meditation, we connect to our observer self, so that instead of being a slave to the thoughts that we're having and being trapped in the tyranny of the moment, we can kind of look in and be like, well, that's crippling self-doubt. Interesting. I'm just running through grocery lists in my head when I'd rather be focusing on something else. And you can notice and watch what's happening, but with a sense of a little bit of detachment. And so that's one of the therapeutic effects that ketamine provides people, is it gives them a chance to have a little bit of space from their feelings of distress, but where you can actually investigate them. And so we see that a lot. Working with people with PTSD on ketamine, we capitalize on that dissociative effect. People are able to go and explore traumatic memories, thoughts, and emotions, and they can think about them and talk about them and look at them, but not have the feeling that it's happening to them in the moment, not be experiencing the same level of distress. And people describe that a lot in the therapy I do with them.
And so is this only during therapy while they actually have the ketamine in them, or will that linger where they're able to do that after that therapy is over?
So there's two different, that's a complicated and wonderful question.
Okay.
There's basically two processes that occur when we're giving people ketamine. One is the dissociative psychedelic effect that's happening in the moment, which is giving people a chance to do deeper therapeutic work. It also is what we think decreases suicidality so quickly, is that sense of I'm not suffering, or I'm suffering differently. Taking ketamine is not always pleasant, to be clear.
Okay.
Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not.
Sure.
And then on the other hand, we have this kind of effect on the neurotransmitters, the NMDA receptors, and it shuts down the default mode network, which is our brain kind of running in circles, thinking the same thoughts. We all have a default mode network, but in people with depression or PTSD, it can get very entrenched.
Yeah.
So the ketamine is shutting that down and giving a hard reset that can later provide more flexibility. That's basically doing the brain work over here. And then you also have created a window where you're doing the therapy work over here. People sometimes even have over here mystical experiences, or experiences of oneness, spiritual experiences, a sense that things will be okay, and they can carry that into their life the same way that any experience we have that's meaningful gets carried in. And then on the other hand, you've got just the physical flexibility that's being created by the ketamine that would be no matter what experience you have.
Interesting. So one of the things that caught me, and I say this because with all of the COVID stuff that was going on, there were people who who I know who had this major anxiety and this constant it's just this constant running of fear about what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but what's going to happen, and it would kind of paralyze people. I would see this, and it's hard for me to grasp, just because I'm sure that maybe it's happened to me before. I don't know, but
you're just pretty regulated. Like, you don't have anxiety or depression at the clinical level, and it's okay.
It's true. Thank goodness.
It's okay that you don't understand that.
But that's when I saw that. It's that ruminating, and this is like I was looking at their website and trying to do my own research, because I told her yesterday when we were talking, I was like, I need to be able to ask questions that maybe sound good, because I don't know anything about this. But I think it's amazing stuff. But it's that process where you're just ruminating and you're running, and that has happened to me, where things just go and go and go, and that in and of itself can make somebody mad. Yeah. Right? It makes me mad. I'm like, why is this just sitting there? What's doing that? And so, and to have that just constantly be there, I guess kind of feel, right? And because nobody wants that, and for it to never go away, I just can't even imagine. And to have a break from that is huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so wonderful, is that you have an opportunity to really, somebody who I can get a break from that by sitting and meditating for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. But again, somebody who doesn't have the same resources that I have right now, who doesn't have a history of meditation practice, who may not have 2 hours in their life to sit down, they're not going to be able to access that.
Yeah. Do you really meditate for 2 hours?
Yeah, not every day. Every day I meditate for like 20 minutes, and then I sit for a couple hours once a week.
That's good.
Yeah.
I got out of my meditative practice. I've got to get back in.
And we begin again. That's roomy. We just come back. Like, that's part of the process too, is watching ourselves fall off and come back. But but interrupting that default mode network, it's really potent, and it will come back online if people don't continue to do other treatments, move things forward, because we've talked about all these benefits of ketamine, and we can go more into that, but I already want to give a disclaimer, which is these effects are not enduring if people don't take further action, if it's not part of an integrated plan. People come and they do ketamine treatment and they feel much better, and then it fades, because the default mode network is
strong,
potent. I mean, it's there for a reason.
Real quick, it's already 10:30. I got to take a break. So let's talk real quick about Rightful. I love Rightful. They are a pain management company, or it's a pain management supplement. So the basis of it is curcumin, or the active component of turmeric. And they have two supplements that go together, a morning and an evening. So the evening, it's got some, calming herbs, and it kind of helps you, relax and go to sleep, and it's a little CBD, and it's a really nice product. People sleep really well on it. And then they have a morning where it kind of gets you focused and helps you go through the day. But the point of it is to help with your chronic pain. And it is sold in pain management clinics, which is one of the reasons why I love it, because we're seeing, that they're allopathic and functional medicine and or holistic, or whatever it is you want to call it, supplements, they are coming together, and there is a place for them, especially when they're this good. And so always know, though, the reason for your pain, right? So it's still going to cover up pain, which is good, but you want to know what the reason is, and address it. So find the root cause. But it's a really great product. So you can go to rightful.com, put in the code TLN20, get a discount, give it a try. Good stuff. It's one of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. So let's move into let's see, what did we hit? So I think
jumping around a lot.
Probably. No, it's fine. I think it's good. One of the things that I have here, I think I wanted to say this just on to kind of piggyback on what we had just said, was, the title of, the show is Silverbullet, or a tool, right? And I think, just as you were saying, I think to kind of hit it, maybe close out that section, we'll probably come back to it, but is that it's not a silver bullet, but it is pretty flipping amazing.
It is amazing, and it's an amazing tool as part of I feel like I sound like a broken record, but people don't hear this. We see them coming into the clinic all the time, and they read about somebody on the internet who did ketamine therapy and just saw all their depression go away, and they come in with expectations that that's what's going to happen, as opposed to expectations of, we've got an extra tool to throw at you, and with a lot of work and a lot of collaboration, it could be more effective than the tools that you've been using. So I think it's really important, because people's expectations that this will fix them, cure them, heal them, are really counterproductive to the therapeutic process.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I want to dig in only just a little bit, because this is not something that I'm good at, and it takes probably a team of people to really talk about the neuroscience of this stuff.
Sure.
But the things that I found interesting when I was reading about it is, we know that drugs have their place. We also know that they can do some pretty good damage, right?
Sure.
But what we're seeing, and I'm not saying that ketamine is perfect, but what we're seeing, for one, is it increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a hormone that promotes the reversal, and I have to read it because I can't, promotes the reversal of the loss of connectivity between neurons caused by chronic depression. And there are other points here, but I want to talk about that, because I find that to be crazy cool.
Yeah.
And how and why does that work? Because it's a synthetic, and you think of synthetics, what's it doing that's bad? And this is amazing.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we love ketamine is that its side effect profile is very low, and almost all of the side effects are things that happen while you're on it, not something that is enduring. So feeling a little nauseous is a side effect, but that doesn't affect going forward. After 2 hours of doing IV ketamine, those side effects are done.
Yeah.
The dissociative effect is a side effect. A lot of those side effects are there, but long term and in the days that follow, we don't see a side effect profile anywhere close to what we see with SSRIs.
That's huge.
It is.
I think SSRIs can be a problem.
SSRIs can be a problem and a life-saving solution. That's the challenge with SSRIs and with medication in general. That's why without being in too much of a love fest with my clinic, I love working with these integrative psychiatrists who look at alternatives. We do intentionally and under the management of physicians work with people to get off medication if that's their goal coming in. And ketamine can be a part of that for the reason you're talking about. When you have this moment that creates more flexibility, and there's great little pictures that show how it starts to create little nodules on neurons so that they can connect to others. I won't get the right word, but it's the synaptic space between neurons is kind of growing out to connect. You see little neurons with little teeny roots, and then after the ketamine, they get bigger roots and are sort of heading out. And that's fantastic.
That's amazing.
And so when that happens, gosh, such a broken record, when supported by other adjuncts.
I think you have to. That's something that you have to say. Yeah.
People can begin to create new pathways.
So, and that's the cool thing too, and I hope I'm not being repetitive, but I just find this fascinating. But, when we have trauma, when we have PTSD, maybe I would probably assume that a lot of people with severe depression have probably had some sort of trauma. Would that be sometime?
They can,
but not always.
Not always. That's what depression is interesting, because sometimes it really comes down to this is a hereditary condition. This is something that a person sort of had, and it just comes in. It's highly heritable. We see that. And then you see people with PTSD where depression is a big part of that, or where mood disturbance is a big part of that. A lot of people we work with depression do have some kind of trauma, just because so many people in our culture do.
Yeah.
1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys will experience some kind of sexual abuse as a child.
That's disgusting.
It is. And so, we're seeing that, of course there's overlap, but it does seem to work differently. And some people just come in with depression. It's a disease, the same way that having certain kinds of heart conditions or other things are. It doesn't make it less treatable.
Yeah.
But up until now, it's sometimes felt like it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that was kind of my point to that was we know that experiences create pathways.
Yeah. Sure.
And so to have the ability to find something that can create other pathways, so you can divert in a sense, right?
Yeah, I often talk to patients about it as though like our default mode network, or in narrative therapy speak, we'd say our problem-saturated stories. Just that tape that runs that it's sort of boring. You know, that tape that runs that goes all the way from like, oh, I need to go to the store, oh, I'm so tired, work is boring, also runs to like, oh, I'm like such a crummy person, no one loves me, no one's ever gonna love me, like the world is ending, like I should probably just kill myself. Oh, like I need to go to the grocery store, I should just kill myself. Like, oh, you know, and I mean, it just gets really repetitive. And so when we use the ketamine, it's like a combination of short-circuiting it. When we see PET scans, we see that this area of the brain, and it's multiple areas, but this default mode network just gets much quieter. Like you see a picture where normally these areas are really lit up, and on the ketamine it gets much quieter. At the same time, we're flooding the brain with these good chemicals, this glutamate. Again, don't quite understand how all of it works, but we have the moment to take somebody out of this rut. Like there's then this window of opportunity to say, this story isn't working, let's slide out of the rut and see what's going on over here. Let's like move over adjacent and start cultivating a more engaging story, a more interesting story. And people do that. Let's start building new habits. Let's start connecting the dots about how actually maybe you're like not that crummy. Like maybe you're kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me those stories.
I love that.
And that's where the psychotherapy comes in.
Yeah.
We see that ketamine is much more effective when paired with psychotherapy, although not everybody is using it that way right now.
Yeah, that's too bad, and hopefully that will change. So the glutamate, I found that interesting because here's what I know about glutamate, and this just goes back to, nutrition, where, we look at things like MSG, so monosodium glutamate. People have a big problem with this because it affects it's excitatory. It affects their brain, right? And so it's an understanding why it's such a problem that we put it in foods. It's a flavor enhancer. It's not a preservative. It's a flavor enhancer. I gotta remember all of these chemicals.
Like, I don't know what MSG is except tasty.
Don't need it. Anyway, so when I'm talking to people who have who tend to get in those, in my world, in those sort of excitatory states, we talk about things like MSG can do that because MSG, get my pathways correct, monosodium glutamate goes to glutamine. Glutamine is supposed to, it converts, I think, back to glutamate, then it's supposed to convert down to GABA. So glutamate is excitatory, and so if you're missing these enzymes that allow for the pathway to convert to GABA, which is calming, then you stay in this crazy excitatory state, right? So glutamine to glutamate to GABA. And so it was interesting to see, because I wonder, I can only assume that there are some of these people who have these sensitivities and they just don't, this pathway is not functioning properly.
Sure.
And so they stay in this place that is not a good place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we see that the ketamine is both excitatory and inhibitory. So you see those like parallel processes happening, which is really interesting. And you do see people having different experiences. So some people, while on the ketamine, experience like just deep relaxation. Like I've gone into, and others feel like their minds are very active and they're moving around a lot.
Interesting.
Some people, not long term, but right following treatment, have some disturbed sleep. So some things can be a little bit amped up. But we see that return to normal after we're finished with the protocol, typically. Yeah, so it's very interesting to watch people react really differently. And my understanding from listening, reading, and seeing is that there's not a full understanding, like with many psychiatric medications and tools, of why when in the ketamine, the flooding of glutamate is so supportive and successful, whereas when they've tried to do some of the work with these NMDA receptors with other synthetic compounds, they're not seeing the same results. So yeah, that would be a question for like a much higher level neuroscientist than me.
It's just so interesting. I just think it's just really cool. And one of the things that just popped up to me here was ketamine reduces depression within 6 hours, with effects that are equal to or greater than the effects of 6 weeks of treatment with other antidepressant medications.
Yeah.
6 hours. I mean, wow.
And that's referring to people who are coming in with acute suicidal ideation.
Okay.
And so that is like one of the places where the ketamine does become more of a silver bullet, which is we don't, in that moment when somebody, like today I am going to kill myself, I don't have any other thoughts or way out. There's research protocols that show, and then I've seen in my own work at the clinic that giving high dose and high in the range of doses that we give, which are significantly lower than the doses used for pain management, used for many of the other uses of ketamine. The anesthetic uses are so much higher, like 10 times more is used there. But for our purposes, giving this high dose IV ketamine can really take somebody from that space and take them down to a point where they are no longer experiencing active suicidality. Again, is that going to last? No, not if not followed up with other treatments. But as a crisis intervention tool, it's really potent.
How often do you see that?
Well, because of the nature of our clinic, we see it less because we don't have necessarily the scheduling to get somebody in. Like we don't have although I'd like to maybe, and we've talked about like having an emergency slot open every day for somebody who's going to come in that way. So, but I've worked with a few cases where it was like instead of going to the hospital and being taken in inpatient, a person's family member has brought them and we've tried this first. And it has been effective.
Wow.
To the point where then we're negotiating safety with the family and keeping somebody involved there. But if I'm going to go inpatient psychiatric, what are they going to do for me? They're going to give me some kind of sedating drugs and keep me locked in a room. And that's the only way to really keep somebody safe in those moments. And so the idea that we can actually interrupt the process a little bit and get somebody some relief from the mental anguish just quickly, short term, it's incredible. And yeah, it is, I believe, probably the most effective. I think it would be fair to say the most effective intervention for acute suicidality that we currently have access to.
Wow. That's so interesting. So if somebody were to go, say his family member takes someone to the emergency department because they're suicidal, would they then just be sent? I mean, they'd have to see a shrink. I'm sorry, I should not have said that.
Shrink. It's okay. I've got a couple of clients who are always like, "Hey, shrink." I'm like, first off, I'm not a psychiatrist, but second off, yeah, that's fine.
I just think it's hilarious. Where does it even come from? Shrink
a head shrinker is what they used to call them.
That's awful. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess I'm more curious. Is this something that would be given in an emergency department situation? Or do they know?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So ketamine has been FDA approved, however, not for these uses. Treating for depression and PTSD are considered off-label uses. I mean, they are legal and regularly practiced, but we haven't yet gotten to where any inpatient psychiatric centers that I know of, there might be some. Things are really changing and growing day to day where that's a tool that they have, but I think it would be a wonderful tool for them to have. Because as it is now, most people have a traumatic experience going inpatient when they have to be put on a hold because they're a danger to themselves. They end up just being out a lot of money, like nothing happens except really that we've bought them some time for their brains to get back to a better place, which often they do.
Do they?
Just in general, like suicide is there's a great little saying, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And so, when you can give somebody, or even other psychiatric medications, antipsychotics, SSRIs, like they are effective, or can be.
Yeah.
But there's some people who just don't respond to them. When we use the term treatment-resistant depression, we mean people who have not seen results from at least 2 SSRIs.
Okay. That's a lot of people, though.
Yeah. That's what I mean, is like you would think it's like treatment-resistant, but
I didn't realize that. I hear that, I say all the time, enough. I hear it enough where people say, well, I've tried this and it's not working. And
sure. Well, and that is the problem, is once somebody's failed 2 interventions, the likelihood that they will succeed with others is just plummets. The statistics are really interesting on that. However, this is not ketamine, but at our clinic and a lot of clinics these days, they are able to do really good genetic testing that shows what people will be able to absorb. And so we're better able to find medications that are appropriate for the individual and their own biochemistry.
Yeah. And that's really the most amazing thing about where medicine is going.
Yeah.
Is this genetic, epigenetic, nutrigenomic, place where we can, look at our genes. I do this in a very small level, but we can look at our, essentially our epigenetics, right? And understand where the problem is, where the pathway, just like when we were talking about that glutamine to glutamate pathway. Glutamine, glutamate to GABA. If those pathways aren't functioning properly due to specific enzymes that are catalysts to create that pathway to work properly, we can see that, which is, you're like, whoa, this is a cool thing. We can see people, this is individualized nutrition, this is individualized medicine, and I just think we're not there. We can't get there fast enough.
And it's so wonderful that the psychiatrists at my clinic, they do this, and it's really wonderful and it's helpful. It is it's hard because it's not widely available. It's not, unless you've already met your deductible, it's not insurance billable. So it's really only accessible to people who have both the resources in their community, the financial resources, and maybe the social resources to have found out that these treatments are there.
It's amazing. I have to take another quick break. Henry takes care of me. He's like, okay, Nikki, time to take your break. It's good. I used to send him a whole printout like this. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do, Henry. I don't even do it anymore. He's like, oh, here we go. He takes care of me. So Zymogen, who I love, Zymogen is a great supplement company who, I'm going to say this over and over again, do not purchase your supplements on Amazon or eBay. You've got to be very careful about where you get your supplements because of the quality, because of the lack of it being what it says it is. So Zymogen is there to support their clients who are the practitioners, and as well as the practitioners' patients and clients. And they're backed by data. They are amazing at what they do. If their product is not absolutely perfect, they will not put it out in the market. I just really appreciate them for who they are and for what they do. So they're not the only company that I use, but I do use them a lot because of the quality of their supplements. So Zymogen, you can go to my website, tastelifenutrition.com. You can go down the bottom. It says Whole Scripts. That's where you would order. You can click on that and you can check out all of the supplements and see if there's anything that you might want to try. But I will tell you, understand what it is that you need. You don't want to waste money on supplements you don't need, and you don't want to create more problems because the supplement is not what you need. So, find out, they do have some good basic multis, which is always fine, but make sure you're speaking to people, or for yourself what it is that you need that's going to be best suited for you. And then put in the code radio5 and you'll get a discount. Okay, so, man, time always flies. I say this every time, but it does. So what else do you think that we need to know? I have a few, notes here, but so much of it we've already covered. I have things like, food, exercise, supplements. What are, I guess specifically, because, Joe, do y'all have a nutritionist on staff?
We don't have a nutritionist on staff, but our psychiatrist is trained in nutrition, and then we'll refer out for more, if more nutrition support is necessary. A lot of the dietary recommendations that we're making are going to be really similar to ones I know that you're making with people. Going with elimination diets, like trying things out, getting away from, getting towards the brain healthy foods, getting blood sugar regulated, getting off gluten, things like this. Awesome. But we probably need to, I'd love to see us have an in-house nutritionist at some point.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. It's just that that addition. I mean, if she's trained in, you're the person she is.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, they're both she.
Okay.
We just only trust women doctors. No, both our founders are men.
It's funny. Well, the training is what's important, because a lot of people just don't have the training. They go by FDA guidelines, which are the food guidelines, which are terrible. But that's the important part, is having some training and understanding that so much of what we deal with, not just physical but mental and emotional, comes from the gut, and looking at the food that you're taking in, and are there food sensitivities, and is there an imbalance of the microbiome and some dysbiosis, and all of these things can create inflammation and create mental and emotional and physical dis-ease.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Getting people on an anti-inflammatory diet is often an important part of the process. I think there are different anti-inflammatory kinds of diets that we're using, but
awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
So that's there, and supplements are super important. Again, we're trying to make changes in the brain, so you want to make sure it's completely supported at the other end. Yeah. So it's like we can interrupt and we can create this moment. It's like we take a crowbar and we like crack the door open a little bit. And then we have to throw as much as we can to get people through the door to another side, as opposed to just standing in the doorway enjoying the fresh air until it closes again.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I love that. And it's such a good idea. And I think it's just, so often what drugs can be good for is to just get you to a point. You're like, I got to get to this point, otherwise it's not happening.
Yeah, that's in my first session. We do pre-ketamine sessions with everybody, where we're getting together and talking about expectations, preparing to work together therapeutically. And one of the things I always ask people is, so what are the things you've been wanting to do that you haven't been able to, that would be good for your health and wellness? And what are those things that you're going to do when we get a little traction? Like if that traction comes, when you see that opening, what are we going to do? And people's answers, like, they know already what they need. It's often things like meditation. I'd start moving my body more. I would get out and connect with friends more. I would do things that stimulate my mind and get away from the TV. I would finally get my sleep regulated. Sleep, can't talk enough about how good important sleep is.
I know.
I will finally get on the protocol for my gut that I've been wanting to get on. So those are the things that I work with people throughout the process, which, I don't think we ever talked about our protocol.
That's what I was just going to say. I was thinking about that a little while ago, and then it just totally went away. Yeah, what does it look like to work with you, work with the group?
Sure. So, it can look different places. There's different ways to administer ketamine. We do what is 100% bioavailable, which is doing intravenous ketamine. So we have a medical staff person, either a nurse or paramedic on staff, that's working with me collaboratively to support. And we do 6 sessions spaced over 3 weeks, 2 sessions a week, or something close to that. There hasn't been perfect research yet. We're still on what exactly the perfect protocol is, but for us, this really seems to work. Our founder has been doing this for years and years, and there is some research showing that this is an ideal protocol, where you get that interruption, then it slides back, and then we interrupt again, and then it slides back, and we try to do that to kind of shock the system into some lasting change.
Okay.
Other ketamine clinics, and it is a somewhat standard protocol, will then do boosters. We like to think of it more as a catalyst and use these integrative techniques to then take people forward, so they're not needing to come in and do ketamine once a month.
Right.
But we do sometimes see that people need boosters. In between those sessions and at the beginning and end, we do what we call integration work. And that's something that's used in any psychedelic, which is you're having weird experiences. We haven't talked much about how weird ketamine is, but it's really weird. And they're having mystical experiences. They're having experiences of remembering trauma, of really dealing with emotions they've been running from. So in addition to doing psychotherapy in the room during the sessions, we're also meeting between sessions and after for as long as we need to make sure that that's getting integrated, that we're using this moment where talk therapy is the most effective it's going to be to get some real therapeutic process.
Yeah. So you do an infusion once a month?
We do an infusion twice a week for 3 weeks. We do 6 infusions.
Okay.
We throw it all, and some people would then do follow-ups for a month. We do not do maintenance ketamine.
Okay.
We will, some people, if they need to come back in for a booster for some reasons, we definitely provide that.
Sure.
But we really have the vision of this is a catalyst. We're going to do this big experience, and it's a big investment in time, money, emotional energy. time off work, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but coming in, giving yourself the best shot possible, is doing those 6 sessions, and then in between them and following, doing these integration sessions.
Okay. So when somebody's finished, what are you seeing with you, with your services?
Like when somebody's finished with their ketamine, what am I seeing?
Yeah.
So many, it's really different things, but I mean, with some people, gosh, I always want to like set expectations lower, but then I also want to talk about how great it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had somebody recently see complete remission of all symptoms. Somebody who had been suffering with depression daily for 30 years, who then said that they had energy, focus, motivation, interest in doing things again, pleasure. That is an atypical response.
Okay.
But we do see some of those. We see other people, the thing I'd say people say the most is, I'm feeling lighter.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm feeling lighter, like things are not bothering me as much. I'm feeling more regulated, seeing a little more energy, a little more engagement, a little more curiosity and openness. Or people saying, like, I just saw a ton of therapeutic benefit where things are making more sense. I'm having a lot more trust that things will be okay, more connection to my spiritual life. So it's really running the gambit from, like, I'm seeing, and I think everyone who comes in wants to see that I've been put into full remission from my depression. That is going to be, probably under 20%. But then you've got that, 50 to 60% who are seeing benefits, like feeling lighter, like feeling more engaged, like I really am starting to do my exercise, and then they're slowly over time kind of getting back to
life.
Or other people saying, I'm feeling good enough to titrate off my medication, and then getting support doing that. Yeah.
So when you're doing the ketamine therapy, so typically they'll stay on their meds. So you'll do them at the same time?
They do it differently. So if somebody's goal is to be titrating off their medication, I've seen our psychiatrist recommend doing it while on the ketamine treatments, because the ketamine is so supportive. It can help. Like there's usually kind of this desert a person has to walk through when they're getting off their medication, where they're going to get much worse. And so some people will be doing it that way. Sometimes people will be waiting till the end. Some medications don't mix well with the ketamine, so some things are being titrated off before. So yeah, that's just something that's like being worked out with the medical team.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I just think it's super cool, and I'm so glad that you came in. Is there anything else that you want to say that maybe we haven't hit on yet?
I mean, I think we've hit on all of it, and I think what's important is, like, this is a catalyst. This is like something to come do when you're ready to do all the other things. Like if you're considering ketamine therapy, it's like a moment to say, yeah, I'm willing to throw my effort, my money, my like social capital, like all at this moment for healing. I'm going to come in and do a ketamine series. I'm going to do all the psychotherapy I need to do. I'm going to like work on my nutrition, like sort of that moment when you're like, yeah, this is it's just these 10 seconds in the rest of your life, like sports movie moment. And if not, if it's just like, I just want to come in and get some ketamine and maybe feel a little better, like that's okay. And if you're really depressed, it might buy you 6 to 10 weeks of feeling good.
Interesting.
And that can be enough for somebody if that, when things are really low. But I'd say coming in with an attitude of readiness and some realistic expectations that we're not promising you a rose garden, but things can get different.
So cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and there you have it. Ketamine's cool.
Ketamine is cool, and don't do it on your own.
Yeah. I think that sounds like a really bad idea.
Ketamine in clinical settings is cool. Ketamine in someone's basement is not cool.
Cool. We're not promoting doing drugs in somebody's basement. Awesome. Okay, so tell us where you can be found.
So we can be found integrativepsychiatrycenters.com. Integrative Psychiatry Centers of Boulder. We've got a website. We just moved to a new clinic in Niwot that is incredible. My office is actually an old recording studio, so it's soundproof, so we can yell and cry and scream, and
Niwot's in Colorado, by the way, for those who have no idea what Niwot is.
Yeah, just outside of Boulder. And we have a big group yoga room, resting room, so the clinic is fantastic. So you can reach out and call anytime, and we've got people who can talk to you about treatment. You can also always reach out to me directly. My email is Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at psychiatrycenters.com. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about whether ketamine could be a good fit.
Yeah, I have one of my clients who just randomly, we started talking about this stuff. She's like, I really want to try ketamine therapy. I'm like, oh, well, I know someone you can talk to.
Oh yeah, we had a great conversation. Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's super interesting. I hope that you all have learned a ton, because I have, and I just think that when we open our minds to what can be, I just think it really is an amazing thing. So good stuff. So I am Nikki Burnett. So functional nutritionist, website tastelifenutrition.com. All the social media is Taste Life Nutrition. Go to my website. You can fill out a free assessment, and I take a look at that personally, and I reach out personally and see if there are things that we can talk about or things that we can work on, and that's about it. So thank you.
Thank
you.
Amazing. Yeah, love talking. I mean, could talk for 4 more hours about all the therapy part, but excited to get a little overview in.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So we will see you in 2 weeks. Have an amazing Memorial Day. Go hug a soldier, and we'll see you next time.